Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second ever episode of At the Mini Farm. We're going to jump right in to our special guest today because he's here already online. And Maggie, why don't you do the introduction?
Hi, everybody. So here with us is Allen Mesick. And we actually met Allen when we were looking for a livestock guardian dog. And small world, really. He actually knows a lot of people that are dog show people because he competes with not just his goats, but he also has rabbits and he breeds the Maremmas. So it was kind of interesting that we were searching for, a livestock guardian dog, and it actually came about that we had a bunch of mutual friends, which is always fun to be able to do that.
I guess let's just touch base on why we settled on a Maremma to begin with. First we had an issue, which you would be surprised, here in an urban area, literally 3 miles from San Francisco International. And we had a coyote come in and kill some of our baby goats and one of our sheep. So we realized, okay, we need to have a guardian out there because we can't control when the coyotes are coming in and when they're not. So we did a little research and we thought, at first Maggie was like, well, how about an Anatolian? And, but they can be kind of aggressive. And being that we're in an urban area, we wanted to find something that would be okay with the people who are constantly around. So after a bit of research, we kind of stumbled upon the Maremma and did some searching from there. And then Maggie, why don't you take over how we found Allen and went through that route?
Yeah, so we had done some internet searches, and then I actually had reached out to somebody kind of local here to the Bay Area, the North Bay, and they're like, we don't have any puppies right now, but we know this person who does. And they gave me the introduction, and then literally within, I just hopped on the Facebook page and suddenly I'm like, oh my gosh, I know Kendall and I know Catlin and I know all those people. So we reached out to Allen, and if you watch our YouTube channel, we did a little intro when Athena came here. So we'll make sure that you can see that link. But, Allen, it would be great. Why don't we kind of do a brief kind of intro on Maremmas? Because we were talking before this about kind of urban farming. And, a livestock guardian dog is something you don't necessarily think about when you live in kind of an urban-ish area. But she has been a delight to have and a lifesaver. So our two littlest, we got 2 new bottle babies about a month and a half ago. Their names are Mike and Ike. And it's, we waited until she was here and ready and doing well before we got any more babies, because I just couldn't go through that loss again. But it's unbelievable to me what these dogs do and how instinctual it is. And so it'd be great. I'm going to turn over to you to talk about them a little.
Yeah, you nailed it with the instinctual. I say it's like an innate desire to take care of the animals around them. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I just want to congratulate you guys on the podcast. I've known you guys for maybe a little over a year when we did meet over Athena, the Italian Maremma livestock guardian dog, who's been a big part of what you do now. And the breed is certainly a big part of what we do here. And I'll tell you more about that. But first I want to say congrats on the podcast. I think that this is super smart to do, maybe now so more than ever. I started listening to podcasts, more dedicatingly over the last year. And I was shocked to find that there weren't a lot of podcasts dedicated to urban farming. And as we get out of COVID, hopefully, I think we're going to see more people paying attention to even more than they were before, where their food comes from. Hopefully, I'm a fiber artist and a fiber, or hopefully where your clothes come from, and maybe even doing it yourself in your own backyard, because it's totally possible. And so thank you for creating this podcast for other people like us that do farming on a small, maybe family farm or even just backyard setting, like we're doing. So thank you for this, and I hope that it grows, and I hope that it becomes a great resource tool for others that strive to do this as well. So with that said, I have a small farm. We don't live in the city. Actually, we live very remote in the lower Sierras, about 2,300 feet in elevation, outside of Fresno County, or in Fresno County, but outside of Fresno. Fresno is about an hour drive from where we are. We can look out onto at night and see the city lights below, but otherwise we live on a mountain. We border a 3,000 acre wildlife preserve, which is home to coyotes and fox and mountain lions and even bear. We've never seen them. So when we moved here about 15 years ago, we were coming up here with a farm that we had started down in the Central Valley in a flat area where it was more urban and we didn't have predator issues. So we knew coming up here, we were going to be bringing basically buffet dining of goat wildlife that lived up here. And we were smart enough at least to think about buying a house and then coming up here with a way to protect those goats. And we were asking all of our goat friends all across the country. They were Angora goat breeders. That's what we specialize in, Angora goats, which raise or grow hair. They kept saying, "Oh yeah."
Oh, Alan, I think we lost you. Yeah, Alan, as he was explaining, is a bit remote, so I think our connection is a little rough. But we'll hopefully get him back here shortly and continue where we left off.
Okay, is this better?
That's great.
Okay, so back to my little story. We moved up here and we knew that we had to get a guardian dog basically to protect our livestock. And our friends were telling us about this Italian Maremma, and we're like, never heard of it, and I didn't show dogs, but my business partner who I was buying the farm with did, and he's like, I never heard of them either. Well, come to find out, they are not an AKC breed. So they're not very popular. And after we got the dogs, I realized why that non-AKC aspect was probably a big part of their magic. They're a dog and a breed that have been raised for centuries to protect livestock in Italy and have been brought to the United States over 100 years ago. And all around the world, really. And they've only ever been kept for that purpose. So they haven't lost that innate desire to do as they were intended to by their founders, centuries ago in Italy. So, and I don't mean to badmouth the dog show community at all. I think it's an absolutely wonderful program. I think that any person dedicated to perfecting and raising healthy, beautiful, standardized animals, regardless of what species it is, needs to be protected. Okay. But some of the natural instincts that these dogs were once used for, have been lost. So the Italian Maremma is not a show dog. They're simply a working dog and have been bred for that purpose ever since. And they're amazing. I mean, we brought one male Maremma to our farm back in 2006 when we bought the place. I actually had to go all the way to Virginia to buy him because there were none available in our area. So I flew back to Virginia. I bought a full-grown male from also an Angora goat breeder who had imported dogs from Italy. So her dogs were like first generation. The male we brought him up to our farm before we ever brought the first goats up here. And I tell you what, we never lost a single animal to a predator. And we brought up, and we at times have 80 to 100 goats. We have quite a few rabbits, and to not lose anything, if you saw where we lived, it would knock your socks off because we are literally in mountain lion epicenter. These dogs are simply amazing. So they live full time with the goats. They don't come in the house. With that said, they come up for scratches. They love to get their belly rubbed. They get great food, nutrients from our chickens, our homegrown chicken eggs when we get those. So they're not pets, but they at the same time are really, they're part of who we are. They're like farm staff, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So we treat them very well, and they do their job. They're insanely. I can't describe them any other way other than just this amazing animal that knows what to do without training.
Yeah. So Athena had her. She went to the vet, and had her rabies and everything. But she's never been on a leash. She doesn't do any of those things, and you're like, oh gosh, she's gonna be traumatized. She's not a fan of going in the car, but mm-hmm. as soon as she is where we needed her to be, immediately, I mean, she would just wag her tail and kiss the vet. And I mean, you could do anything. We, in fact, it's spring now, almost summer. And it was unbelievable to me how great she was. I took a slicker to her about 2 weeks ago. It's kind of brush. And she just laid there and let me brush her out for like an hour. It did like a couple sessions, 2-3 sessions to get it all done.
I think it was like 3 days in a row you did it. And I mean, I'm like, oh, she's looking a little skinny now. No, she just she lost all that under puppy coat with the spring coming around. I mean, you pull her guard hairs back and she's naked underneath. I'm like, okay, you know, we do live where it's foggy. You can start growing that back.
But Allen, a testament to the breed and what you've produced is she is amazing at what she does, but that temperament to be raised with goats and to be groomable by people. And
let's talk about her temperament too. I mean, the fact that we can have, you know, like we said, we live in an urban area where we can have strangers come over and people. She's like, she hasn't met a person she doesn't, you know, she loves every person she's met. That being said, we have a church behind us, and when they're back there playing, I mean, she'll bark and say, hey, there's people back there, but it's not an aggressive bark. It's a, hey, I'm just letting you know, there are people back there. In case you weren't aware, they're back there, but never any aggressive tendencies towards any people who have been by the house at all. So,
and that was a big concern. That was a big concern for us with what we were getting, for our livestock dog. So, it's amazing to me. And you told us when we talked about how they're not AKC registered and, you know, how do we come about it? But what you've said, we breed and show dogs. But I would have to say that is one of my biggest frustrations with quote unquote show dogs is they change and not just the look, but the personality and the temperament. Like, I think Athena embodies exactly what we wanted. And I think that what you guys have produced is just fantastic. I mean, you have to have a waiting list like there's no tomorrow. I mean, everybody that I know loves her when they meet her. And she's the cutest thing ever. She looks like a giant polar bear, if I do say so myself. She has not had a bath since she came to the house. And for somebody who has show dogs, I mean, we bathe our dogs every week or two. So I was saying I brushed her out because she was shedding, which it probably would have just come out on its own, just from the looks of her, because I didn't get it all out, and now it's all gone. But that coat at the base is white. Like, she's clean.
Because it's so dense.
It's amazing. And what I think is funny is when we have rain here, of course, goats melt, which I didn't know before. Goats melt.
Not Angora.
Okay.
Angora Goats would be out there in the rain.
Okay, good to know.
I'm still... Okay.
So
yeah, our sheep, they are perfectly fine when it's pouring rain, but the goats, like, I mean, it can be just a light mist and they are gone. They're like, nope, we're out of here.
Oh yeah, it's like crazy. They will all go into the shed, and she will lay outside, pouring rain, perfectly happy, drenched, perfectly happy. Would rather be out than in the shed with the stinky goats. And I mean, it really is amazing. I feel blessed that we found this animal. And you know, so you were talking about how you came up there and how you haven't lost any animals, and you think about this pandemic that we're in and how society may be changing. I think the only thing I would hate to see happen is for them to get too popular, you know, and lose that.
I think the show aspect had a lot to do with why most breeds of dogs were started not as lap dogs. You know, we talk about 1,000+ years ago, if not more, dogs were domesticated, and they were not domesticated to sit on someone's lap. Of course, some toy breeds probably were, but most dogs started with a purpose. They were built by their forefathers to do a job that was something that humans didn't want to do, or something that they couldn't do. Think about a rat terrier. You know, hello, who wants to go running with a rat? Who possibly could? But a little dog of that stature and that face design and sleek body and speed can do it.
Yep.
So the rat terrier today may not be the rat terrier that it was, 200 years ago plus. They all breeds started with this purpose, I should say. And for whatever reason, Maremmas never were recognized in the AKC, or it was probably more of the fact that no one pushed them to be part of the association. So, and one thing that I do when farms come to us and ask for a Maremma, I make sure that they're going to go to a farm or a place that is going to use them for what they were intended for, centuries ago. So even with you guys, you have a small backyard farm. That's totally acceptable. What I don't want is someone to, make a house pet out of it because they simply want a big white dog in their house. Like that's not cool to me. That's not what the breed is intended for. And let's face it. Would Athena be happy in the house on the bed? Probably not. She wants to be out there doing her thing with her animals, and then they have that natural desire and instinct to be with livestock. A good story. Okay. 2 days ago, 5 a.m., I'm still up working because I'm a night owl, and I hear, Alan, the goats are out. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? The goats are out? Like, okay, which pen of goats are out? Oh yeah, the pen with the most in it, of course, is out. And it's 5 o'clock in the morning, it's dark, and they're all by the house. Well, if you saw where the goats normally are kept, it's not by the house. It's half a property away up in the hill. That's where the house is. And they're eating weeds, eating things they shouldn't be eating. And guess who was with them? The two that were living with them. Yep. The Maremmas, the gate was open, which is, okay, they got out because I left the gate open the night before. The Maremmas didn't go one way and the goats the other. No, the goats went towards the food, around to the next bend or the next bit of green grass and brush and briars and things they shouldn't be eating. And the dogs were with them the entire way. So the dogs want to stay with the goats because they know it's their job to protect them. So it's unbelievable. You don't think about dogs living with livestock. In fact, oftentimes you think about dogs with livestock. Oh no, you're going to have a feral dog attack and the animals are going to be harmed by the domestic dog. But in this situation, it's reversed. In fact, these Maremmas, if you have a feral dog problem, will probably ward off feral dogs that get into the pen going after the goats. Mm-hmm. So they're a magical breed. And you mentioned other breeds earlier, Akbash, Kuvas, Great Pyrenees, Anatolian. All those dogs at one time were intended to take care of livestock, and they're still widely used today. But each one of those breeds, when we did our research, just had something about them that didn't work well for our situation. Like you guys live in a small community where you have maybe a church behind your house. You may have people walking by. Here we border this wildlife preserve. We are literally in the middle of nowhere, but with the wildlife preserve, they get guests that come in and take hikes and walk. And in the spring, there are flowers galore on this mountain, and people come from hundreds of miles around just to see those flowers. We did not want a dog out there barking at the passerby that comes to hike in the preserve. We needed, or not just bark, but like want to eat them alive, right? And some of the livestock guardian dogs might eat you alive. That's why I wouldn't. But a Maremma, they'll give you a good bark and they'll tell you like, hey, you're not supposed to be here. This is my territory. Don't come any closer. But I never have ever felt that they might harm another human, which is, of course, that's the forefront for me. Like, we just can't have that.
Yeah.
They've got to be safe for humans, even humans that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. I mean, if we introduce someone to her, loves them. Just
totally fine.
But if it's somebody like Tom was saying at the church up the hill and stuff, she will say, this is my yard. You have fun, but this is my yard. If you come this way, I'm going to tell them that you're coming into my yard. So it's just the natural tendency. So you were talking about how she wants to be with them. So we have kind of this back meadow. And then we have we have like a little fenced yard right by the house. And we're lazy and don't always want to mow it. So we'll let the snacks, as we call them, come into the backyard. And when we first started doing that, we didn't let Athena come in because we had promised you she wouldn't come in the house. So
I think that was in the contract.
It was very clear. And it was hard for like a dog person. It was hard. I'm like, oh, she's so cute.
The first time we started letting her in with them when they come back there.
He's talking.
Because
Wait, what was that, Alan? Go ahead.
What does a baby Maremma look like?
Oh my God.
Are they?
Oh my God. It is the cutest freaking little polar bear. So soft and cute. And the YouTube of when she came. Yeah. Mm-hmm. YouTube when she came, everyone's like, "Oh, that is fantastic." So anyway, we didn't want to let her in the backyard. So Tom was going to say something.
Yeah. So, well, we had initially when she was young, let her come back and play with the dachshunds because, you know, the dachshunds will be up at the fence and we didn't want them constantly barking at each other. So they had to get to know that, you know, but we started having an issue where she would come back with the goats and the sheep and then we would, you know, herd the sheep and the goats out. And she was like, I'm not leaving, I'm going to stay here because, you know, Edward's going to come out and we're going to play. I'm like, well, no, not today. You got to go back with your animals, you know? So we had this little period of a few months where she's like, no, I want to play with the dogs. They're going to be out soon. I'm like, no, you got to go back. And now she's like, oh, okay, we're leaving. But it was that sort of young adolescent, you know, but these guys will play with me. The sheep aren't playing with me, you know? So that puppy stage. And it was actually really funny. Now she comes back there and we call it her rest time because she will literally be dead to the world sleeping when she's in that backyard with the sheep. She's like, I did my night shift. I'm going to bed. They're good for a while. So it's actually pretty funny.
But you're right. If we don't let her in or we close the gate, she will stand at the fence and bark until we let her in with the snacks. She doesn't want to be separated from them, which is just fantastic. We do have chickens now, which we didn't have before.
Chickens are great with Athena, correct? Or
So,
let's say Athena is good with the chickens.
So she's getting there. She did think that they were fun.
Yeah, the issue is the play. So we've got them. The chickens are in their own enclosed area right now, and I think because she's only just a year, so I think another year she'll be a little more settled. She definitely still is like, oh, I want to play with them, and the play ends up being a little rough for the chickens.
Yeah, they just don't understand how big they are.
Oh, she has no idea.
She's 100 pounds?
I think it's 75.
Yeah.
Like 75 pounds.
Growing to do, probably.
Yeah. And so Mike and Ike, she wants to play with them. So, and I think they're about, what do you think, 25 pounds now?
Yeah.
Yeah, like 25 pounds now. Her favorite is Licorice, who's our Nubian. But
yeah, he's the only one that'll stand his ground with her when she's kind of playing with the other. The others will kind of run off, and she'll start to nip at his butt, and he just turns at her and is like, "I'm not going anywhere. I weigh more than you. I'm taller than you. I'm not going anywhere."
I think we shared a video with Allen where when we feed them, Athena lays in the middle of the hay, and she just wants to be loved. Like she just wants her herd to love her.
She wants the goats to thank her and the sheep to thank her for all of that dedicated work that she does all night long when they're sleeping.
Yes. So it's just fantastic. So we have these goats, and then we got chickens. But tell me a little bit, this urban farming. How do you think, like, people in kind of urban areas can get more self-sufficient and like chickens, like how functional can be? I've never done chickens. Tom is the off the grid expert in this world, in my world. So we have these chickens. We bought them in the mail, you know. That was a new experience. That they come in the mail. Alan,
well, have you ever gone to the USPS website and you go to click and ship, and there's actually in fine print one option that says live animals, and then it says in parentheses, I think, poultry only. And I think a lot of us miss that, like part of this world, but poultry are the only live animals that the United States Postal Service will ship. Yes. Yeah, you actually can buy a box of chickens, a box of little day-old chicks from the hatchery, and by the time they get to you, they're still alive and ready to roll, because chicks really don't need food or water for the first 24 hours. So literally they're born on these hatcheries, and they're boxed up, sexed often. If you're buying chicks, you can actually buy only hens, because you don't want crowing roosters, and roosters don't have a lot of function if you're laying or going for fresh eggs. So you can buy a box of sexed female day-old chicks. They can come in the mail, like you guys did, and then in 6 months, 7 months, you've got your own backyard flock, as you guys defined in your first episode, of laying hens. So it's pretty remarkable, and the dogs do a great job, by the way, protecting poultry, oftentimes if they're grown up with them. So Backyard farming, I would think that if you do some research on backyard farming, one of the first things that comes up is owning a few laying hens in your backyard, because they're quiet, they're small, they don't take up a lot of space. A lot of zoning laws have changed in response to backyard farming chickens. So they're a lot looser than they used to be. So you can actually have chickens in your backyard if you live in an urban area. And what's better than fresh chicken eggs? I mean, seriously, we have them here. I mean, my breakfast every morning is our eggs that were raised right here on our little farm. And there's nothing better. Once you try one of your own eggs, you never want to go back to store-bought. They're just not the same.
So it's crazy. So we raised our first set. I gave away like 5 of the chickens, and so we need to order more because of course we don't have enough. And I don't like. I want pretty chickens, so we have more pretty ones coming. I'm assuming when they get there. So we did the sexed version. Got all girls of everything, but some blue lace red Wyandottes. So we expected to have all hens and maybe a rooster from those blue laced. So when I gave away 5 of them, we knew one of them was a rooster. So that one was going to go because my friend Kelly lives on 10 acres and she can have the rooster. But we had these 2 salmon faverals that were like super fancy, and they have these like puffy cheeks, and they're called muffs, and they're white and peachy colored. And as the second one, because we got 2, the second one started to get real feathers, it wasn't white and salmon fluffy. And it kind of, I think it's a he. Their names, they were the only ones that have names. So they're Lox and Cream Cheese are their names. And Lox kind of looked like a vulture, like brown and like, you know how the character like Igor in Disney kind of walks with their head hunched down, and once the other quote rooster left, suddenly Igor started to kind of stand up straighter and look a little, and I'm like, how do we get a rooster? We wanted sexed ones. And Tom's like, you gotta understand, it's not like 100% Maggie.
Sometimes they get pretty close, which is remarkable. And it is an art to sex baby chicks. I tried it. There's no way. No way.
Anyway, so Igor, I think he might be a rooster, which if it turns out that he kind of becomes a rooster, they're actually really pretty. Like he's going to get a white head and this like dark brown black body. But he hasn't made any rooster sounds yet. So maybe he's a dud hen, but I don't know.
Well, they're still young. We still have a little ways to go.
But I keep saying to Tom, I'm like, I want them to be friendly. So I'll put chicken feed in my hand and try and get them to eat out of my hand. Alan, those things are vicious.
They're hungry.
Yeah.
They love food.
But like something that people need to realize, like they see all these chickens that, people hug them and they're cute and sweet. They're dinosaurs. Like they're like, they're dinosaurs. Like you look at their little feet and their beaks, and they're like, they will eat anything. So we do compost and they love it. Like when we had asparagus the other day and gave them the asparagus ends and blueberries and grapes and all this stuff. But the weird thing is Tom says that you give them eggshells. And that to me is odd because they lay
because
those.
of the calcium. Yeah. It's great for them.
Yeah.
And that's also why your chicken eggs taste so much better than the ones at the store, because the ones at the store, the chickens were eating boring old chicken food, but yours are eating a conglomeration of different highly nutritious extras, and what goes in comes out, and that's why your eggs are so much more delicious.
So how many chickens do you have?
I only have like 8, believe it or not. That supplies enough, way more than enough for 4 people. In fact, we're always giving away a dozen eggs to friends when we go over, to visit. We're like, hey, I brought you a dozen eggs. It's like a little housewarming kind of gift, which is also fun. I mean, who doesn't like to give something that
Right.
you from your farm, and then your friends are like, oh my God, they think it's so special. Of course, then they get to enjoy real farm raised eggs versus the store bought white, boring, watery ones. So
Yeah.
backyard farming is such a cool thing. It's going to be, I hope, more popular. Starting with chickens is a great gateway to it. If you can't have a lot of animals, and of course, check with your local government. You want to check out what you really are allowed, because the last thing you want to do is be turned in by your neighbor and animal control shows up and they're like, you really can't be doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So, but check it out, because a lot of us now, I shouldn't say us because I'm really rural, but a lot of people, like living like you guys, are totally allowed to have a few animals in your backyard. So check it out. And those laws, thankfully, have been loosened by the kind of that backyard movement.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys have looked at raising maybe some fiber animals in your backyard too. My hope is that maybe the next gateway for backyard farming are animals that can raise fiber, like mohair, like wool, like Angora, cashmere, that a backyard producer could then easily process on their own, spin into yarn, and then knit into finished products. Believe it or not, knitting is not just for old ladies anymore. Knitting is a cool, trendy, like hip thing to do. I was in Rhinebeck, New York at the National Angora Goat show 2 years ago. Rhinebeck is just up the Hudson from New York City, and I could not believe the busloads of young New York City, hipsters piling off the bus, begging to buy yarn and other things to make their own sweaters and scarves, because it's cool and trendy. There are cafes in New York City that are dedicated to knitting. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I never lifetime. So it's definitely not an old lady thing. None of this stuff is archaic. In fact, it's coming back. So it's coming, and it's exciting. It's coming back full circle in a small, very small, backyard farming aspect. You're not talking about commercial farms, but our friends just went fishing today, and she's spraying herself because she's trying to clean off the fish. Sorry.
Oh, poor lady.
Living on. So anyway, that's my hope, that we can have some goats in our backyard too, and make our own fiber.
Yeah. So Ellen, so Angora goats, that process. So do you shear them once a year? Do you shear them twice a year? How frequently do you do that? And what is that process?
Great question. So shearing is the process of a haircut. We like to say shearing is the correct term. So sheep, for example, are shorn once per year because their hair grows, or their wool grows maybe like ½ inch per month. But Angora goats raise something called mohair, and they are the most efficient fiber producers in the world. Like their body, their energy goes towards making hair. So if you ever put your hands on an Angora goat, they don't feel underneath like a big meaty fat sheep or cow, okay? Because their energy is going towards making hair, and their mohair grows 1 inch per month. So in fact, we get 2 per year out of an Angora goat versus 1 shearing of a sheep. So they're far more efficient. Mohair was really popular in the 60s and 70s. It made a really kind of extravagant, exotic sweater because it can be very fluffy. It also accepts dye, unlike wool. It really saturates color, and it has a sheen to it. It's very, very exquisite. And 40 years later, where we are now, mohair is not as popular because in those days, mohair was quite a bit coarser. It was not as soft to the skin. And if you talk to ladies that had mohair sweaters in the 60s and 70s, they go, oh yeah, it was really fluffy, but it was really coarse and scratchy, and I didn't like wearing it. So unfortunately, a lot of people left the 60s and 70s thinking that mohair was going to be scratchy. But, like we talked about raising dogs for a purpose, Angora goats are raised for their beautiful mohair. So producers, farmers that were raising Angora goats realized that the market for mohair was declining. People were not wearing it because it was scratchy. So the producer, these Angora goat farmers, mainly in Texas, got a hold of this, like, hey, we got to change our industry. And they started raising and selecting for Angora goats that were raising mohair that was a lot softer and skin touch appealing. So today, a lot softer than it used to be in the 60s and 70s. So if you buy mohair, which I encourage everyone to do, it's okay to wear it and you'll love it. It's very, very cool. And it has the same attributes, like accepting dye and being shiny and fluffy, as it did back then.
But softer.
But way softer. Yeah, like a cloud.
That's awesome.
It's one of the world's luxury fibers. So I love it.
That's amazing. So you have chickens, you have the Angora goats, and then you also breed rabbits, right?
Believe it or not, we have a rabbit farm, and I've done that I was 13 years old. I got into rabbits when I was in high school. I was like, show rabbits what? I had a pet rabbit, and I went to the local fair, like a county fair. I was growing up East Coast in Connecticut, and I brought my little pet Halloween to the fair. And I was taken under the wing of the lady that was in charge of the department at the fair. And she said, you can show rabbits. I show rabbits. And I'm like, I know you can show dogs, but rabbits? Who shows rabbits? And she goes, hey, there's a rabbit show coming up in a couple weeks. Why don't you go with me? And I was like, I'm down, and I couldn't believe what she told me. It was totally true. People show rabbits just like dogs and cats and other forms of livestock. And it was an excellent, nurturing community of people that wanted to help, especially kids. It's a very youth driven culture. These rabbit breeders, they love getting younger people involved and teaching them all the things that they've learned throughout their life. And you'll find people in rabbits that have been there for their lifetime, 60 years. I mean, yesterday I got to give a distinguished service award to a member of the American Rabbit Breeders Association, who I consider a mentor. And we did a live feed on Facebook. He's been doing this. He's been a rabbit judge since 1976. Okay, well, I was 3, and he's still doing it. And it's just amazing. The people that get into this hobby, they love it. Of course, they love the rabbits, but the culture, the community, the camaraderie that goes along with the rabbit culture is really unlike any other. And I've seen a lot of other, people that raise animals, other species, and it's just not as tight knit and interconnected and supportive as this rabbit community. So I consider myself very lucky to have fallen into that as a teenager, and I haven't left since. And I became a rabbit judge too, and now I have a rabbit farm, and it's a big part of what I do, and it's opened up a lot of doors and possibilities too. So,
So Allen, as you know, we're dog show people, and we kind of have that same community. In our last podcast, we talked with someone who shows dogs professionally, and in this current environment, there's no dog shows. So are there rabbit shows, and how is the current environment affecting you guys?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this is the most static I have been since I was 13. Like, we are not going to shows. Everything is shut down. So I always imagined that maybe rabbit shows would be faced, and all animal shows would be faced eventually with some sort of barrier, whether it was instigated by animal rights groups or people that didn't understand what we were doing. I never imagined it would be because public events would simply be canceled. So, people can't be around people thus can't be at these rabbit shows. So we haven't had a rabbit show since early March, and it's been very odd. Very odd.
Have they talked about when they might come back? Because we're in like no man's land here with dogs.
Exactly, but we were in California, so our restrictions I think are a bit tougher than other parts of the country. For example, there is a rabbit show next weekend in Tennessee, and there are people from California that are actually going to drive there to compete because they miss the rabbit show so much, and there just aren't any around here. And we don't know when we're going to be lifted. It all depends really on what our governor decides. So for the moment, we are at a standstill, and this is actually rolling into our busiest time of year because, like I mentioned, how I got into this whole thing with a local fair, agricultural fair. I work at fairs throughout the summer. Beginning in June, I work at the Alameda County Fair for a month. I've done so for the last 16 years. I serve as their small animal department coordinator, and I don't have a job this summer. And after Alameda, I usually move on to California State Fair, Oregon State Fair, Orange County Fair. Previous to all that, I would have gone to San Diego County Fair. I mean, my summer is literally back to back going to fairs, either as a coordinator, someone that works with the animals at the fair, or someone that's exhibiting at the fair, bringing my goats, bringing my rabbits to the fair. And that has been totally depleted. And it's a really tough time for a lot of us small producers because we depend on those small contract jobs. You may not know this, but if you show your animals at a fair, the fair often offers a cash premium prize for those winning animals, and that supplements our feed costs throughout the year. So all of us that have depended on that for years are kind of going, what the heck are we going to do? Mm-hmm. And I fear that a lot of small producers will actually get out during this time because they can't afford to feed the animals that they once could because they don't have an income source that was once very reliable. So that may change the entire culture of fairs and showing. So I don't know what's coming. It's a very uncertain time.
Yeah, we've noticed like some of our friends with 4-H kids, and they're starting to do online auctions and online purchases of their fair animals, because like you said, there's no fairs. So they're trying to figure out a way to, one, sell these animals that, normally 4-H kids would sell to recoup costs to pay the loans that the feed store gave them, to then again, do it again next year. And without the fair and the auctions that generally support the, all the 4-H kids, they're kind of resorting to community. Hey, look at these are the animals we have. Let's see what we can do, And I think for the most part, in that aspect, people have stepped up to kind of support the kids in that. So I guess that's a positive on something positive that, is happening in that whole scene. So
yeah, the virtual livestock judging, I mean, if you asked me a year ago or maybe even 5 months ago, I've been like, what? Like that's you can't judge from a computer screen an animal.
We're seeing it in dog shows. So it's,
Yeah, it's happening. Like it came out of the gate, I would say nearly immediately after the first signs that we may be shut down for a while. And I'm fortunate enough to have worked with a few of these virtual judging ideas. And there's actually a company I'm working with now, or been asked to kind of assist them in designing plans to better and more accurately and authentically judge and do things that we would have otherwise done in person. So yeah, and they're actually a lot more, they're actually a lot smoother and maybe accurate than I ever would have imagined. So, we as humans are an inventive, creative being, and hell or high water, as animal producers often are, we will find a way to continue to do what we do. And I hope that preserves us in the very uncertain times to come.
Yeah, it's crazy. This has been fantastic. And I know you talked about you were building your little studio back there, but we would love to have you come back. And I would also just like to give us a little plug for just your overall view of animals again, just as a kind of closeout. If you were to give kind of 3 tidbits to somebody today that wanted to get involved with either goats or rabbits or Maremma, what 3 tidbits would you leave?
Gosh, I don't know if I could come up with just 3. There's so many. For one, if you have kids or if you are maybe planning a family, the small animal side of all of what we do is such an infectious and supportive group, and an amazing community to have children grow up in. We live in a society where so many kids are glued to video games and into TV and into social media, but there are still animal producers out there that get together like face to face. Not right now, but normally we get together and there's that nurturing paternal, maternal mentorship that still is very organic and goes on in our community. So number one, get into this hobby because you've got kids and you want your kids to grow up away from a computer screen and around like-minded people that are very in tune with how the world functions and how we live, because food does not come from the grocery store. Let's face it. It had a long route before it ever got there, ever got to our dinner plates. So the kids that are grown up around that and that understand those pathways, they come out a whole lot more well-rounded and prepared for the world than kids that were glued to a screen. So if you have kids or getting into, starting your own family, consider 4-H, consider FFA, consider raising animals in an atmosphere like what we're doing. And I don't have kids, but I get to work with a lot of other kids from my peers, my colleagues and friends. And those kids are amazing. So that would be number one. Number two, freshness. I mean, there's no better story than to tell that what you're eating or what you're wearing came from animals that are in your backyard that you nurtured from like you guys did from day one, from a box of chicks that came in the mail. That is like not made up. That's true. And then to be able to maybe give those products or market those products. What I'm doing now, I'm trying to make a studio in my backyard on my farm. That's this COVID thing, by the way, has afforded me the time to finally make this dream come true. But I'll be marketing my goat hair, called mohair, to artists around the world, whether they're making dolls or sweaters or upholstery and blankets and rugs. I'll be able to market those products from my home studio and whether you have 2 goats or 100 goats or more, you will still produce way more than you'll ever personally need, and that offers a little bit of extra money. And marketing those products is really fun, and getting to use the internet and podcasts like you guys. I mean, you are the gateway for all of us to share what we do. Because otherwise, out here in the middle of nowhere in the rural mountains, we don't get to just set up a roadside stand and get 1,000. We need people and podcasts like yours to market our journey. Gosh, and then 3, I don't know. I think you guys are going to agree with this one, that owning animals and having them around you brings a great sense of peace and and I think that, initially I laughed at this animal therapy thing. I'm like, why are people bringing animals to be therapy? And then I realized I'm laughing because that's something that I do every day. Animals bring me a great sense of peace and tranquility. And having those animals around you, whether it's one cat or one dog or a flock of chickens in your backyard that you get to nurture, humans are a purposeful being. We're inventive, we're creative, but we're also maternal and paternal. And being able to take care of something and see its joy and happiness because of what we've provided to it, whether it just be some chicken scratch or some blueberries that are rotten in the fridge, and to see their joy and ecstasy, that brings me, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this, a great sense of peace. And so animals are a source of therapy. And in this time, I'm so glad that I'm surrounded by my animals, because otherwise I wouldn't have anyone, to really converse with. I'm not saying to talk to my animals or anything. Animals are a sense of therapy. So, for families, for freshness, and then finally for a sense of tranquility and peace, there's a reason for everyone to get into some kind of animal raising and keeping, whether it's in a small backyard urban setting, which is, I'm hoping, going to grow and be really something we're all much more attuned to, or in a bigger farm setting. So you just pack up and buy some acres somewhere. I think that there's a place for everyone.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Allen.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm totally excited about what your podcast is doing, and I can't wait to share it with all my friends, because your vision is something that so many of us can relate to.
Thank you.
So good luck, and give Athena a big hug for me.
Oh, of course.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much. You guys as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
So this one's went a little bit long, but that's okay. You want to say anything to wrap it up? Should we just save the rest for something else for next time?
Let's kind of back. So we introduced the snacks at our first.
Right, because we kind of jumped straight into the interview, so I guess we should kind of just do a little reverse.
So we introduced the snacks at the first podcast, and I didn't include Mike and Ike.
Or Athena.
And
your mom pointed that out to us.
Yes, it was immediately brought to our attention that we did not talk about them. And we had talked about having Allen on for a podcast, which is probably why
we saved it.
I didn't bring her to the forefront. So to kind of circle back, so we have a little less than an acre here. Allen calls it urban farming. We're not quite farming yet. We call it the mini farm. I consider it, until we have eggs, I don't consider it farming yet. Tom may disagree, but
right. It's a hobby farm. We're not. Eventually, we'll be producing eggs, but we're not. And our sheep could produce wool. They do produce wool. It's not of great quality, but as we get more settled into things here, and as you start to work less, and
really?
and because usually we're off at dog shows, so it doesn't leave a lot of time to kind of focus on the farming aspect. But we definitely have, it's a mini farm. We definitely have animals that are taken care of. Just the husbandry is,
it's a chore.
It's a chore.
Yeah.
And it's enjoyable. You'll, after work, you'll go and sit on the little bench in
It's true.
in the meadow and just, for an hour, just sit there with the animals,
It's true. So Allen was talking about the tranquility and therapy of just animals in general. And we've always had dogs, but the goats, the sheep aren't nearly as social. But so we bought a bench because I said, well, I want something to go hang out, and I would just sit on the ground, which means sitting like on goat poop because it's everywhere. I mean, not like it's messy. It's not like dog poop, but so I got this bench with this little side table that, of course, they immediately tip over and knock around. So we've affixed it to the ground. But that is a very typical, after I finish up a day at work, grab the compost bin and I will go out and give the chickens, whatever compost we have. And then I will sit at the bench, and Mike and Ike, who are the young ones, and they were bottle raised, so they're very social. And then Snickers and Licorice, who were also bottle raised by us, will also come over and be very social. I mean, truly, Licorice is Tom's goat, so he could care less if I'm sitting on the bench. He just wants to be with Tom. But Snickers will come over and be very social. And it's just being able to sit, having an acre, like, you don't think it's that big of a deal, but when you are literally 5 minutes from the San Francisco airport, it's just, you can go out and sit, and I can watch my chickens and scratch baby goats and feel like
surprisingly peaceful for
it's like my own little slice of heaven.
Yes, for being so urban. Anyhow, I think we're gonna wrap it up for today. Okay. So we have the plugs. That's what I'm gonna do now. I will link below, if you're watching this on YouTube, the places where you can download the podcast. Right now we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify Podcasts. So we hope to be published in more areas soon. It's also available to watch on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Mini Farm, just to see posts and updates and pictures and what's going on around. So I think that's about it, and we will be back next time to talk about something new that I don't think we planned yet.
Probably. Maybe food.
Food. Food's always good.
No.
All right. Everybody have a great day, great night, great morning, whenever you're listening to this. Stay safe, and we will see you next time. Bye.